right, so we'll start the session. Good evening, everyone. My name is Vikas Agarwal. I'm the founder of AIF and PMS Experts India. So I think some of you who have been attending our session, they are kind of familiar with the format of the show. It is very simple. We try and get in touch with industry experts. We invite them. We try and read their minds, understand which philosophy or the strategy which is working well for them. So the whole idea of organizing this knowledge-based session is to kind of empower our investors with more wisdom, more knowledge, so that it can really help them to create long-term wealth. And today we've invited two gentlemen from Ambit Asset Management. So Ambit is, I think, is a well-known group. I don't have to introduce, but those who are attending for the first time, let me just quickly introduce Ambit Group. So this company was started by Mr. Ashok Wadhwa, and as an organization, they are into various businesses. For example, they are into wealth management, they are into asset management, they're into credit, they are into corporate finance. They are also into institutional broking and institutional research, and they are known for their institutional research capabilities, both in India as well as globally. I think the kind of research they do. In fact, one research report that I keep reading is their disruption report, and I truly like the way they sort of cover the entire industry, and they keep talking about disruption, which can come from anywhere. So I don't have to further introduce the group. I think Siddharth would do so. So let me have the pleasure of introducing both the gentlemen out here. So firstly, welcome on the board and welcome on the show of Ask the Expert, Siddharth and Manish.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you, Vikas. Thank you for having us here.
Sure. So let me just quickly take a minute to introduce both of them. Firstly, thank you so much for accepting my request and coming on the show and sharing the knowledge with our investors, Siddharth and Manish. Just to give you an introduction about Siddharth first. So Siddharth is the managing director at Ambit Asset Management business. Siddharth has over 2 decades of experience, out of which he spent more than a decade with Ambit itself. And prior to this, he was one of the co-founder member of IFL Wealth when they were starting up. And before that, he was the branch manager at HSBC, one of their largest branch, which is their Pedder Road branch. And Manish has again 15 years of experience, out of which he spent about 11 years with Nomura, covering the various industries, more like FMCG and a couple of other industries. At Nomura, spent about 11 years. He was one of the top performing and very consistent in terms of covering up the industry and coming out with ideas. Then now he's part of the Ambit Asset Management business, handling coffee can investing. So coffee can investing is the concept which was started by Saurav when he used to work with Ambit Capital, and under their institutional capabilities, he sort of authored the book also called Coffee Can Investing, where the research team also played an important role in terms of providing the data points to Saurav. And then now he's been taken over by Manish, and he's managing it very, very effectively. So as an asset management business, they are known for their simple philosophy of buying high quality businesses at a reasonable price. And today we'll try and understand more from Siddharth is that because markets are haywire and very volatile, and a lot of people are sort of attracted towards high beta stocks which are participating in this market. So today I've invited them. The agenda of the discussion is to understand more from them in terms of how do we sort of set up the machine in which we continue to get consistent returns, more so from an investment perspective. It's like a ATM machine. You put 100 rupees, you get 115 rupees back. And I have been witnessing that all their portfolios have been very, very consistent. And as an organization, when we do our own due diligence in terms of looking at the portfolio quality or looking at the consistency in terms of performance, so Ambit sort of comes on the top of the chart every time. So today we try and understand that if you keep doing the same thing, how do you get the similar result every time? So that's where the expertise, that's where the consistency plays an important role. So today we'll understand more from Siddharth. So over to you, Siddharth. If you could just take us through what's there in your mind and the philosophy, and then we'll come to Manish and take it forward. Over to you.
Sure. So thank you, Vikas, for the generous introduction. Just a couple of disclaimers. Ambit coffee can philosophy was actually 2 centuries old, was started by someone in the West, and then it got adopted by our institutional equities team comprising of 15-20 people who came together and created this philosophy of coffee can, which became a hit in the market. And then 3 people from Ambit wrote that book, not from the inputs of 3 people, but almost 15 to 16 people wrote that book. But we couldn't have written 15 names, and hence we decided to put 3 names who were at that point in time were part of Ambit Institutional Equities and Ambit Asset Management. So that was a collated effort from the institutional equities team as well as from the asset management. So that's a long short about the coffee can investing. But here today and now, we are not going to talk about coffee can. We are not going to talk about any philosophy. We are not going to talk about what's happening. We will talk about you, your money, your investing, and how can you ensure that you continuously, as Vikas put it in a very simple manner, earn returns with consistency. That's all we are going to talk about. It's neither philosophy, no gyan, nothing. And I will use a couple of analogies because human history dates back 4,000 years. And whosoever has achieved this philosophy in whichever field has achieved greatness. 1 month back, exactly a month back, people believed money making is very simple. You put the money into equities, you're going to make money. COVID is gone. We are only going to see a surge in the economy. We are only going to see more investments. 1 month, people are fearful, people are scared. There are precious lives which are getting lost. And repercussions, people are also getting fearful of investing in the markets. There are multiple ways of making money. You can invest in bitcoins, you can invest in gambling, you can trade, you can short sell, you can do multiple things. But we are not going to talk anything because the risk associated with all of them is significantly high. And what we are going to talk about is de-risking equities. Equities itself is a risky asset class, so hence we are not going to increase the risk. We can't assure returns, but what we can do, increase the probability of generation of consistent returns. We can't assure that you will win every time, but what we can assure that if you do certain things in the right manner, you will continuously create wealth. And that's what we call greatness. Next slide, Umang. So if you type Google, greatness, in less than a second, you will get almost 50 million hits. Everybody has a definition of greatness. Everybody defines greatness. Some people even mean greatness simply means just getting the work done. How you're feeling? Great. It does not mean anything. Hence, I looked at the history because history tells us a lot of things. And the best way to learn, to look at the future, is to learn what has happened in the past. As Aristotle said, we are what we repeatedly do. As humans, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence then is not an act, but a habit. So if you make excellence as habit, it leads to greatness. Let's look at 3 examples in the history. And that's not being coined by me. That's coined by universal consensus of greatness. Next slide. Alexander the Great, who became the ruler at a young age of 17, 18. What people don't know about Alexander, that he died at the tender age of 32. He conquered from Macedonia to Egypt to Hindu Kush. So he nearly reached India. He actually acquired some part of our erstwhile Indian subcontinent, and then he was halted by Acharya Chanakya and his Shishya Chandragupta Maurya. In his 15 years, of his career as a warrior, as a ruler, as a king, he never lost a single battle. Never. What he did, wherever he went, he created cities after his name. During his entire journey, merely in 15 years, he created 70 cities. A lot of them are still prospering after nearly 2,400 years. They are still prospering. They were named after Alexander, and one of them, interestingly, after his horse as well. But what made Alexander great? 3, 4 things. He used his name to create the brand which can be recognized, brand which will create fear in the minds of people. And keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, here, that he was not always having a significant army, significant artillery, significant resources. During his 15-year period, when he won those wars, those battles, those conflicts with unwavering frequency, almost 70% of his battles, 70% of the wars which he fought, he was outnumbered by the enemy. Despite of that, he won. Isn't it a common marketplace which we see today? Competition intense. In the paints industry, there are 2 leaders who control nearly 92% of the paints market. Jensel Nicholson, one of the biggest paints company, entered India with all prowess. Nothing happened. Nothing happened at all. So these are some of the things which one needs to understand, that how greatness can be achieved by doing the same thing again and again and again. Alexander did 3, 4 very simple things. He had an ability to dream really big. His guru was Aristotle, one of the greatest philosophers. Nearly at the age of 13, he studied under him for 3 years, and he had a different vision of the world. He dreamt that he will be the ruler of the world merely when he was 13, 14 years old. He planned ahead. He strategized. He strategized at a scale which was unforeseen. He motivated his men, his team, his people. We all keep calling about processes. But who formulates these processes? The team. The team, the people. They formulate processes, and these processes are then, when adhered, leads to consistency. Next slide. Another great example. The grandson of Chandragupta Maurya, Ashoka the Great. And if you look at in this map, he nearly conquered 85% of the Indian subcontinent and beyond. And he did exactly the same thing. He created edicts, he created symbols so that everybody can remind him. So the brand promise, the brand delivery. And he himself had a very high moral discipline. Why am I focusing on all these words? Because these are exactly the things which help you win in investing as well, which reduces the risks in equity as well. He expanded and dominated the Indian subcontinent and ensured that he led his team from the front. He ensured that the justice is delivered in his presence, and more often he was involved in day-to-day matters as well when it pertains to justice. Next slide. This is unusual, this is uncommon, but, and we hate, as an Indian I hate, but there's no denying fact that Britishers at a point in time in 1921 controlled nearly 30% of the world's land mass. I'm sure everybody knows that the sun never set in the Queen's kingdom. That was what it was said. And what they did, interestingly, to consolidate their prowess is they created processes to smoothen, they used technology. So to make sure that they can exploit the wins from the colonies, to ensure that more exploitation of the resources from the colonies and increase the trade and commerce from the colonies, Britishers were the ones who created the system of SWIFT, the telegraphic transfer. The intercontinental transfer for the first time was done by the Britishers. They exploited the Industrial Revolution to their favor. The entire Europe had the benefit, but they saw the opportunity, they had that vision, and they created that opportunity in their favor. We all know that Indian Railways was created to ensure that the entire India, the entire Indian subcontinent can be developed into an effective market for selling their products, their goods which were imported, and to take the raw material rather quickly from India and export it to the Western market. So they did utilize technology as their backbone to ensure they have control over the colony. So if we say that it's only happening in the 21st century, sorry, it happened since humanity has existed. And this is what leads to greatness. Now I would ask my friend, my colleague, wonderful speaker Manish to take over and get into the specifics. Why and how and where can you invest to achieve this greatness? Manish, over to you.
Thank you, Siddharth. So this is, because Siddharth is such a good orator and he gave us such good examples, I thought I'll also start with one saying, which is good returns is an outcome of holding great business. And this is something that we constantly advocate, right? Whenever I am talking about investment, or in general, anybody in Ambit Asset Management is talking about investment to any person, you'll hear these two things, which is return is always an outcome, number one. And number two, that to create a great portfolio, you need to have a business owner's mindset. Right? There's a huge difference between being an equity investor and between somebody who acts as a business owner. If you believe you are a business owner, you will be concerned about the quality of the business, the quality of the company, the leadership, the promoters, their quality, their conduct in their personal ventures, listed ventures, unlisted ventures, not just the company itself. You would be more concerned about the corporate governance issue that might have happened 8, 9, 10 years back. And you would also be concerned about consistent profit growth in the portfolio. And believe me, if the balance sheet is strong, light, and debt-free, and the management capabilities are good, you combine these two things with consistent profit growth across long periods of time, you automatically have a great portfolio in your hands, which will deliver returns over long periods of time and create immense amount of wealth. It doesn't really matter what the short-term cycles are like. But eventually, consistent profit growth will always converge with great equity returns in the end, and the two always end up meeting. I can give you some examples over here. If you go done is looked at each industry separately. So we've looked at cyclicals, we've looked at banking. Just go to the next slide. Yeah. So over there, if you see, for example, autos, look at the difference between Eicher and Hero Honda, both in terms of profit growth as well as in terms of market cap. Look at the difference between Shri Cement and ACC. Look at the difference between HUL and ITC, HDFC Bank and SBI, TCS and Wipro, Power Grid and Coal India. Each of these belong to the same industry group. HDFC Bank and SBI are both BFSI names. Eicher and Hero Honda are both two-wheelers. Shri Cement and ACC are both cement names. And it's a long period time that we are looking at. We are looking at FY11 to FY21. But this is the difference between holding a good company in your portfolio and a great company in your portfolio. That eventually there is always going to be this lure of short term. There is always going to be this cycle, this management change, that turnaround story, and all of that is something that you're going to see in short terms. But eventually what plays over long term is always going to be quality, is always going to be great companies. And this is what differentiates between good companies and great companies. Not saying for a moment that Hero Honda, SBI, Shriram Transport, Tata Steel, Coal India are not good companies, but they are not great companies. That is what is a differentiating factor. Consistency, right? Consistency, relentlessness, if I may use that word. And that's something that we saw in the examples that Siddharth also gave us earlier, that relentless pursuit, which Alexander showed, which Ashoka showed, right? In the first half of his life in a different manner, Ashoka showed it in a different manner in the second half of his life. If you move to the next slide, you'll see the difference between the good companies and great companies, right? I mean, essentially the difference is consistent EPS growth. Everywhere you see Bajaj Finance, Britannia, Eicher Motor, Bajaj Finserv, Shri Cement, IndusInd Bank, right? Titan, HUL, Asian Paints. The commonality is what I said, which is basically consistent profit growth. And that's where owning the business or a business owner mindset becomes so important. And anywhere that you see cyclicality, anywhere that you see inconsistency, you look at the return, which is the bottom chart over here on your screen, it always shows, right? So great companies, a great portfolio is always comprised of companies that have consistent growth in profits across long periods of time. That is number one. And number two, of investors who have business owner mindset and not equity investor mindset, right? That becomes a very, very simple but very potent combination. So the key question that you should be asking me right now is, what makes a business great? How do you differentiate between a Britannia and something else, an Eicher Motor or a Hero Honda or a Bajaj Finance and a Shriram Transport? How do you differentiate what makes a business great? What are those traits? What are those qualities that you should be looking at? And if you move to the next slide, I will let you know. There are essentially 6 qualities that we are looking at which makes a business great. Number one is management capabilities, right? Integrity plus capability makes a great management. And great management makes for a great business eventually, right? And that is essentially is a first factor that you need to look into. Safari is a great example over there. If you look at their management, which is essentially Sudhir Jatia, ex-VIP guy, he took on the market leader and created a very, very strong presence for his brand. And you look at the way Safari as a stock has performed, right? And that kind of tells you. Second is, sometimes you need unconventional approach in very conventional situations. And that works. Now, the best example I can give over here is DMart. a great success story. I think at some point of time, books are going to be written about DMart. An industry where nobody succeeded. Every single person who did business in this industry failed is a business where DMart succeeded, right? And we are going to dwell into DMart in a little more detail. Prudent capital allocation. We've seen how many companies like, for example, ITC, etc., have lost returns for their shareholders for multiple years because the capital allocation was not prudent, right? And that essentially becomes one of the differentiating factors between good companies and great companies. Great companies either know how to reinvest it fruitfully back into the business. The ROIC is always going to be higher than the ROCE, or you're going to return it to the shareholders, right? Essentially, you're never going to hoard up cash, right? And a good example over there is PI Industries. Constantly and that capex is always used to put up high ROC projects and EPS accretive projects, and the result is something that we are looking at. The fourth trait is looking ahead and innovating. Innovation is something that I can never overemphasize upon, right? I mean, look at Nestle. They have had, I think, 30 new products in the last 3 or 4 years now. A pace of innovation which is completely unparalleled. Yes, there's always going to be a success ratio involved. There is always going to be a high failure rate involved in innovation. But even if 5 to 10% of your innovations fire, and they fire big, and they become big products, right? Maggi started in 1984 small. It is what it is, a 3,000 crore behemoth today, because of the innovation and the relentless pursuit of it. Specialization, very important. Again, niche focus, something which is small today but has the potential of becoming big tomorrow, which not too many people are focusing on. The best example we can think over there, Aavas Financials, right? They focus towards self-employed segment, the retail segment, and they have, grown in the last 3-4 years, if you see in the way the stock returns count. And last is building a strong brand and trust. In a consumer-facing business, if you have a strong brand, 90% of your battle is won, right? Now, you look at this, that when Titan started off in 1960s, they were the only retailers of watches in India other than HMT. When they started retailing jewelry in 1990s, again, the only people who had actually thought of it. And the only people who in 2000s thought of retailing, prescription eyewear in an organized fashion. And every time people thought that they are mad, but largely unorganized industries you take and you create brand and trust over. And that is essentially what makes these companies. Stories on how these companies have kind of become great over a period of time. So the first example that I would like to take here is Avenue Supermarts. Now think about it. A lot of industries fail because demand is not there. A lot of industries fail because capital investment is not there. A lot of industries fail because global expertise is not there. The most amazing thing about Indian retail industry is that everybody failed. Every single person who's come in this industry so far has failed, right? Aditya Birla as a group has failed. Future Retail as a group has failed. Spencer's has never ever made operating profit in their life. Reliance Retail in their earlier avatar failed. V-Mart has seen failure once. And the amazing thing is each of these businesses, owners, if you see Reliance, for example, Ambani's, Aditya Birla, for example, Spencer's, again, coming from Calcutta, Future Retail, never short of money. Capital was never a problem. Global expertise, when you look at guys like Metro, when you look at guys, like Bharti Mittal, when you look at guys like Walmart, for example, never a problem. Global expertise, never a problem. And yet demand was strong and nobody succeeded. And this is where Avenue Supermart stands out. To achieve success in an industry which has consistently been plagued by failure is where they stand at. And how did they do it? They essentially did something which I mentioned earlier, an unconventional approach in a very conventional business. Number one, what they did was they said, we will own the store. We are not going to pay rent on it. They made their P&L light. And second thing they said, we are going to provide value for money to the customer. So when you walk into a DMart outlet, it's not a pleasurable shopping experience. They don't spend on decor. They don't spend on employees. They don't have sofas to sit over there. They have nothing. It's a very inconvenient experience to walk into a DMart store. And yet you look at the same store sales growth, double digit, clocking in year after year for a decade plus now time frame. Why? Because people have this belief that it is always going to be the cheapest product available. They keep the number of SKUs low. They pay their suppliers in advance, right? They hire less educated employees. Their locations are very carefully chosen. And that is why they are able to convert. Okay, this is absolutely amazing, which has never been seen by anybody, is 15 to 20%, 15%, 17% gross margins into 9% EBITDA margin. Look at the chart on the top right-hand corner. Amongst all the companies, right, the gross margin for DMart has always been lowest and the most consistent. And yet they have the highest EBITDA margin. And that is the magic of discipline. Discipline in terms of where you open the stores, discipline in terms of focusing on return on capital employed, discipline on same store sales growth, discipline, and discipline combined with unconventional business approach.
Manish, can I just interrupt and talk about one point which Avenue Supermarts has done
Sure.
fantastically well as compared to all the brilliant examples which you gave of the, whether it is Birlas, whether it is Reliance, whether it is Biani Group, everyone. And that one simple example is people. So as Manish rightly said, people and only people. They hire people who are little less educated. They hire people who are merely 10th pass. Now you would anticipate that if they are less educated, they would give poor client experience. These people come from very humble backgrounds. They come from tier 5, tier 4 cities to make a living. And what Avenue Supermarts has done, only two very simple, brilliant things. One, every employee is trained very, very well before they are onboarded. And what they check is not the skill, not the quality of expertise, not the level of expertise, but what they check is simple. Your willingness to work, your willingness to fight against odds, your willingness to stand up. That's one very important thing they look at when they hire. And I'm sure if you do Google, you will find they share the rewards with their people as well. In fact, when Avenue Supermarts got listed, a couple of security personnel also became crore-patis because they also had ESOPs with them. Motivated employees. That's what made the difference. So that's number one. Number two, what they do, again, very simple. They said that the lunch hour would be done in the store and at a place where employees can sit peacefully and eat. Remember, we all are social human beings. We all want to interact, and they build camaraderie amongst various employees. And that happens when you eat together, when you spend some time together. And they focused on those softer skills to ensure that motivation of the employees remain at the peak. And when the motivation is higher, automatically employees are vibrant enough to influence the customer irrespective of the environment the customer comes in. Because people touch matters. Sorry to interject, Manish. Please proceed.
No. I think very, very valid points. Next, if you look Titan, amazing company. I have a lot of respect for them. And at every juncture, I've come across people who just laughed at Titan and has said that they are mad people. Even now, the latest venture that they've started, which is selling saris, people always come and tell me that, what is Titan doing selling saris? What is the commonality of the theme over here? The commonality of theme is building a trust through a strong brand. Like I said, look at it. When they started selling watches in India, the only company that used to retail watches privately, other than HMT, which was a government-owned company where you had only 24 design choices. The whole case with the jewelry venture, same was the case with prescription eyewear, and same was
Apologies, guys. Looks like there is a weak network.
Yeah, Siddharth, if you could take over, by the time Manish will check his internet.
So what Manish is
now the commonality with the saris venture. Even
Manish, if you could just check itself and come back.
Manish, why don't you switch off your yeah. So what Manish is trying to say is very, very simple. So naysayers said that they will never succeed just by selling watches. Naysayers also said that they will never succeed by selling specs. They also believe that they can never become a big company by selling jewelry, branded jewelry. And today, ladies and gentlemen, tell me one brand beyond your local jeweler, or I'm not sure whether you would even trust your local jeweler. When you are gifting someone a Tanishq product, it means that things are authentic. There is no need to check, cross-check. There's an underlying perception that the jewelry which one is purchasing is authentic. There is no cheating. And interestingly, ladies and gentlemen, here, Tanishq does not make money on the gold prices. So a lot of people believe that gold prices have moved up, say their profitability will go up. If the gold prices come down, their profitability will come down, because a lot of jewelers hoard the gold, and on the jump of the gold prices, they make money. Tanishq, on the other hand, hedges its gold price to the T. So if any piece of jewelry at the end of the day gets sold, the consolidated gold which is sold, it's exactly procured the very same day and is covered. There's a fixed amount of inventory which is lying in Tanishq, at all points in time, which means that they do not speculate even a single penny on the gold price movement. So where do they make money? Obviously on the making charges, obviously on the experience. And that's what makes Tanishq great. Let me give you another very simple analogy here before Manish joins back. You would be surprised. In 2008, Reliance Power IPO came in. Sorry, Manish, I'm digressing from your subject.
No, it's fine. I just got logged out in the middle there. Continue.
So in 2008, we all remember there was a mega blockbuster IPO came in. Mega blockbuster IPO. That was the IPO of Reliance Power. Interestingly, at that point in time, in 2008, the total number of shareholders who participated, the total number of shareholders who participated or were present in Reliance Power were nearly 28 lakhs plus. At that point in time, Titan had only 62,800 shareholders in 2008. That's all. Today, maybe a year back, I have checked this data. Maybe in the beginning of 2018 beginning of 2020 or end of 2019, I checked this data, and back then, Reliance Power from the IPO date till today had eroded 99% of the shareholders' wealth. Despite of that, it had 22 lakh shareholders, come down from 28 lakhs, which were existed at the time of IPO or immediately after the IPO. They went down, but very significant number when it has eroded wealth of 99%. During the same period from 2008 until 2020, if I have to look at Titan, very simply, in last 12-13 years, this stock has delivered over 1200% in last 13 years. 1200%, ladies and gentlemen. And you know what is the total number of shareholders which existed a year back, when I checked the data? They were barely 1,60,000 shareholders. That's it. 62 has become 2.5x. That's about it. But still, look at the number of shareholders. That talks volumes on where are we focusing our energy, our money. Manish, please take over.
No, I think you summed it very, very beautifully, Siddharth. We'll move on to the next one, which is my favorite, Nestle. Now you look at the chart on the top right-hand side. I mean, I've never seen a chart like that, right? Phenomenal. They are market leaders in so many categories, right? Think about it. Instant, noodles, infant cereals, infant formula, tea creamer, ketchups, sauces, pastas, white chocolates, wafer chocolates, and instant coffee. Right? So that's a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 categories where they are number 1 and 1 category where they are number 2. I've never come across a portfolio like this, and I've never ever come across a company like this. And look at the chart on the left-hand side. Look at the number of innovation. 2016, 40, 2017, 17, 2018, 20, 2019, 24, and 2020, 18. Amazing. And the most amazing thing is when you talk about innovations in FMCG, the failure rate is very, very high, almost close to 80 to 90%. What is the success ratio for Nestle's innovation? 70% success, only 30% failure. And that shows in the consistency of the company in terms of profit growth. You look at EBITDA growth, right? You look at return on incremental capital. You look at fixed asset turnover. You look at market leadership, right? That is essentially what differentiates between the great companies and good companies. Consistently innovating, relentless approach to innovation. And each of these examples that we've given you over here, which is essentially Nestle, which is Titan, which is Avenue Supermart, you'll see commonalities across all 3 of them. Great management capability, which is relentless approach, a game is always fixed, an unconventional approach to doing business, right? And focus on consistency. And a combination, it becomes a very, very deadly combination, right? when you look at these companies, that if you stay invested in these companies over long periods of time, that is essentially the end result which comes out for you, right? And that is how great portfolios are essentially made. Moving on to the next slide. That's a question which I said, right? That is what makes a great portfolio. Now, if you are to invest in a product, a PMS product, or any product for that matter, what are the 4 things that you should look at? Number 1 is that there should be an overarching philosophy. Always very important. Why? Because nobody guarantees returns to you. What people are selling you is essentially a thought process. And the moment they deviate away from that thought process, the trust is broken, the trust is lost. So it has to be a fund which is determined, which is run, and which has an overarching philosophy, which is uncompromised. Second thing, a very experienced research team and deep dive research capabilities. Very important. Look at us, a 1,500 crore AMC, which has 8 research members. Very important that you do your own research. You have your own earnings models, you have your own projections, you meet the companies on your own and not are dependent on any sell side to give you second-hand research. The third is very simple, which is I've talked about all along. Focus on earnings growth, having a business owner mindset. All right? Focus on profit growth in your portfolio. The returns will automatically come. And fourth is risk management. What should be the risk management strategy? Discipline. Not long short, not derivatives, not commodities, nothing. But consistency through discipline. A good return is always an outcome of good process. And that is what we believe in, right? And that is essentially the message that I wanted to give out. Now, just to spend 2 minutes on the outcome of it, right? If you move on to the next slide, what happens when you put all of these ingredients together and create a great portfolio? The end result is consistency and safety. Look at our 3 portfolio returns, and I'll just spend a minute each. Coffee Can, 20% returns since inception, not a single calendar year where we have delivered single-digit returns. Every single year. Look at the focus on the chart below. 29%, 15%, 20%, 22%, culminating into 21% return on a since inception basis. I've never seen a more consistent fund. You move on to the second fund that we have, which is essentially Good and Clean. It is also one of the oldest portfolios. Again, 15% return since inception, outperforming the broader markets by 5 percentage points over a 6-year period. Superlative. Again, you look at 2019, you look at 2018, every time the market has hit a difficult patch, we have delivered. And then last, but by no means the least, our superstar product, which is Emerging Giants, 15% return since inception over a 3-year period, when the base index has given you 4% return. We've performed in 2018-19, which was bad time. And then we have performed in 2020, which is a good time again. And this is what is the end result of consistency. With this, Siddharth, I'll put an end to my presentation. Maybe we can start off with the Q&A.
Sure, Manish. So Vikas, over to you.
Okay. Yeah, so just an announcement. Anybody has any question, please type in your question in Q&A box, and then we'll start shooting these questions to both of them. There are already few questions, so one second. All right, so the first question is, do I need lump sum of 50 lakhs rupees for the investment in Ambit CCP? The answer is yes. Is there any STP or SIP option? Manish or Siddharth?
Manish, you want to take this or?
Yeah. So there is an STP option. We leave it to the investor. Now, when you have the form, right, when you are going to be filling it up, you'll see the option over there. But there are 2 conditions that we always apply. One is that the STP options are available only on a monthly basis. We do not do weekly STPs. We do not do quarterly STPs, fortnightly, nothing. It's just monthly. And second thing that we do is we need minimum 2.5 lakh rupees to invest every single time. And these are the two conditions that need to be met. And as long as these two conditions are being met, you tell us how many months of STP you want, that option is always open.
All right. The other question is one of the industry stalwart has already good amount of exposure in Titan. So you think it will underperform for next 4 to 5 years? What's your
No,
take?
I think this is a time for Titan now. I think the stock's performance will actually witness now. Why am I saying so? A couple of reasons. One is as the pandemic situation improves, and we've seen this world over in US, developed part, some of the developing countries like South Korea, China, India also in the second and the third quarter, the economic recovery is always very V-shaped. And whenever the economic recovery is V-shaped, it is discretionary consumption which always comes out in the forefront, and staples consumption will always take a little bit of backseat. So all the pent-up demand that you see from weddings perspective, from investment perspective, etc., are all going to come out. And from that perspective, from a 2 to 3 year period perspective, I think it's an amazing investment to have. And what adds sheen to Titan is the fact that most of their investment businesses, when you look at, for example, iRed, they have broken even over there. So that investment phase or loss-making phase in that business is over now. Watch is doing well. And gold prices, if they continue to come out and there is a risk on trade which kind of happens, then again, as gold prices kind of continue to soften, Titan will do well. So Titan is always going to be a part of my core portfolio. I'm never ever going to deviate from Titan. I think it's going to do really well.
All right. Before we move on to the next
thing, because just one more additional point, because of the COVID, more and more people are not able to spend money on food, on many other festivities because of the restrictions. Automatically the spend is directed towards gold jewelry automatically. And remember, because of the COVID restrictions, a lot of people are not able to place the orders, go and check, recheck. Hence the demand is shifting towards the stores or towards the brand where you go, see, pick in one shot. You don't want to make multiple trips to do the same buying. So
all right. So before we move on to the next question, one disclaimer from our end, very specifically, that we are talking about these stocks. These are stocks which are either part of portfolio or the Ambit and their team is basically sharing their house view. And you must consult either your investment advisor or you reach out to us before you make investments in these companies directly. That is number one. And number two is, it's very difficult and rare to get Siddharth and Manish together. So I would urge all the participants to ask as many questions as you wish to. And we have enough time today. And Siddharth has promised me that he will ensure that not even single question will go unanswered. So therefore, I would request all the participants who have joined today, please ask as many questions as you wish to, and we will ensure that we'll answer these questions. Because last time I remember we couldn't manage to answer your questions. So the other question is, when will the ITC start making money for their investors? Will the demerger of tobacco business happen, or is it because of non-ESG business?
No, the tobacco business demerger will never happen because there are commonalities with other businesses. Right? I mean, for example, paper supplies, paper for the cigarettes, tobacco, agri-business supplies tobacco, right? FMCG kind of becomes a distribution-led synergy from a forward integration perspective. So no, that won't happen. At some point of time or the other, they would want to separate and demerge out the hotel business, though, because it's not a legacy business that they have. It is something that was saddled on them through a merger, right? But having said that, I think this is a time for ITC now. I think this is a year when I'm very optimistic on ITC. I'm very, very positive on ITC. You would have probably seen the stock going to 300 already had the pandemic not happened, the second wave not happened. But the fact of the matter is, this is the first time in 3-4 years that the government has not increased taxes on cigarettes, be it either excise duty or GST or the cess. Most of the businesses are actually doing fine and well. They have taken a price increase as far as cigarettes is concerned. A small price increase, but a price increase nonetheless that will aid profit growth in this business. FMCG, the strategy has got right. And best of all, their capital allocation efficiency has improved by leaps and bounds. They have stopped investing money in cash burning businesses like hotels, like hospitals, etc., etc., etc. Right. So from that perspective, I think I'm very, very optimistic on ITC. I think by December, January, you'll see this stock yielding great returns.
Okay. The next question is there any threat to Asian Paints after announcement of entering Birla Group in the paint industry?
No, I think that's the best thing that can happen. See, this is a point that Siddharth made very well. You look back 20 years, there were 6 or 7 very, very strong players in the paint industry. Now, what is happening today? There are 2.5 players, not 3, 2.5. There is Berger, there is Asian Paints, and then there is half of Kansai. That's pretty much all what it is. That's the whole paint market in India. Now, what are these guys trying to do? They're trying to push themselves. There is no real challenge as far as paint industry is. So Asian Paints is pushing itself to get into newer businesses, to become a complete home improvement play from what is essentially just a pure play paint company. Right? And a couple of new players entering this business is actually going to spur competition. It's going to spur innovation. It's going to bring in a certain, sense of competition, which is going to lead to complacency going away. And it's going to push the whole industry growth further. It is going to re-energize your logistics and distribution chain, more brand investments by companies. I think the only problem is that we need 2 at least more good and solid moneyed people with great brands to enter into this fold. 1 is not enough. We need at least 5 good players in paint. So I hope the competitive intensity rises further. That can be the best possible thing for Asian Paints, in my view.
I think the size of the industry will also continue to grow.
Absolutely. There's no debate about it. Double digit for the next 10 years. Consistently. No doubt about that.
So the new generation has not.
So growth is not an issue.
Yeah. Okay.
No, more from the exterior paint side. Look at the condition of buildings in Bombay and Delhi. I mean, that's a completely underpenetrated industry. Absolutely, waiting to be exploited kind of an industry.
Absolutely. The other question is, how is Ambit coffee can portfolio is different from Marcellus CCP, consistent compounding portfolio?
Let me take.
I'll go on mute. I'll let Siddharth answer.
Yeah.
Okay. So initially, as I mentioned in the beginning when I was giving the disclaimers, very clearly, this entire philosophy of coffee can was initiated as practical tool of investing by Ambit Institutional Equities, which then carried forward in the PMS, and then a couple of colleagues of our left, and then they started Marcellus. There are 3 simple differences. There are very, very 3 simple differences which lie between Ambit Coffee Can and any other portfolio. 1 is discipline. So when we say discipline, it really means that we are holding the businesses forever for very, very long periods of time. We are not here to opportunistically keep switching depending on the mood of the market, depending on the mood of the economy. And that's where the biggest wealth comes. So what we intrinsically do as humans, what we do is we cut the legs of our fastest horses. Very simply, if I have to explain to you, if Vikas, you have got 2 stocks, stock A and stock B. Stock A, you have invested 1 lakh rupees. Stock B, you have invested 1 lakh rupees. All this you invested on January 1st, 2020. On 31st of December 2020, your first 1 lakh, stock A, has become 3 lakhs. And your stock B, which is 1 lakh investment after a year, has become 80,000. So your total value of your portfolio is 3 lakhs 80,000. Simple. 2 lakhs of investment, 3 lakhs of 80,000 is the market value. If I have to ask you that your wife is now insisting no, because you have made such good returns for yourself, please buy a earring for me from Tanishq worth 60,000. Can you please do it? Please do it. And she has been nagging you for a while, and now it's high time. So you have to exit 60,000. Which stock will you choose? Which stock will you choose to exit that 60,000? More often,
Generally, the trend is that something which is doing well, people tend to take off the money from there and become the long-term investor in non-performing stocks.
Absolutely. So you will cut the leg of your 1 lakh, which has become 3 lakhs, and you will say, hey, I have made so much profit. Let me just take out 60,000 from here. Still, I'm 2,40,000 positive. And you're not realizing that you're cutting the legs of your fastest horses, which will pain you in the long term. This year has been good. You don't know. Hence, so that's one simple thing. We try and allow our businesses to grow seamlessly over longer periods of time. Whilst other portfolios, other Me Too's, what they are doing is fairly simple. They are opportunistically getting into the bets, which may play out, which may not play out. I am no one to comment, but they are playing momentum. And we all understand that momentum at some point in time can become dangerous, because not every time God will tell you, hey, look, correction is going to happen, I will correct. So that's number one. Number two, whilst we stick to what we are saying is the original filters. When the coffee can was incepted in Ambit Institutional Equities in 2014, ladies and gentlemen, 2014, the concept was very simple: 10% revenue growth or 10% RO, 10% asset growth for the BFSI companies, and ROCs of 15% or more for 10 years, or ROE in case of BFSI greater than 15% for last 10 years. And we stick to that playground, we stick to that rule, we stick to that norm. Whilst others chose to conveniently adjust the norms which suit them. So that's number two, which is the differentiation. Third, we believe that we will stick largely to businesses which are oriented towards the customers directly, rather than going into the play where it becomes a B2B, because strong brand, strong conviction on the margins in elastic demand can only happen if your brand is direct customer focused. It's not a B2B. And that's what we have stuck with, whilst others have taken other routes. So the option lies very clearly in front of various investors: to stick to the promise, to stick to the conviction, to stick to the discipline. In the short term, there will be a lot of things which will work in favor or in against. But as you keep crossing 5 years, 7 years threshold, you will see how all our three portfolios in the longer term have consistently outperformed the benchmark. And that's the simple promise which we make. And we will ensure that all the Me Too's will also experience this.
Okay, so next question is, with 2.5 lakhs rupees, can we invest in your PMS and start the STP? The answer is no. The minimum threshold for any PMS is 50 lakhs rupees. Vikas, so this question is from you. So you'll have to start with 50 lakhs rupees. One thing that you can do is, and perhaps we'll check with Siddharth, is that suppose you have 50 lakhs rupees, can you divide that amongst all three strategies, or maybe two?
So we can do that. So 50 lakhs, we can divide it into two strategies, because the minimum threshold for any strategy is 25 lakhs. And why we have kept it is so that you can meaningfully gain. We don't believe in spraying and then praying. We don't believe in it. We believe that where it will make a difference to your wealth, we should invest there. And that's why 25 lakhs is the minimum ticket size per strategy. You can split your 50 lakhs into two strategies very clearly.
All right. Somebody is asking, could you guys please highlight the specialty chemical companies which are going to do well in next decade or so?
So specialty chemicals, what we believe is chemicals where again market leadership is there. We wouldn't want to name the companies because I don't want to spoon feed or have my judgment. The way we look at it is very, very simple. One thing which is important for greatness, and this is something which if you guys are interested in reading, you should read this book 0 to 1, Peter Thiel's book. He says the first thing you should do if you want to become great is not to become a small player in a very large market. Become a small player in a large market, that's not the strategy. You should become dominant player, 60, 70, 80, 90, 95% in a micro market. It can be a geography, it can be a product, it can be a service, it can be anything, but remain a dominant player, because if you become that, your margins will remain intact. You will have pricing power with you. So look at chemical companies which have 60, 70, 80%. And some of the interesting companies have just got listed. Some of the companies have been in existence for last 15, 20 years. Chemicals is the space where India will have its prowess for next 8 to 10 years to come, for a decade, 2030. The third decade of this century, chemicals will rise and shine. So do not miss this opportunity. We have a lot of good exposure in our mid and small cap portfolio in chemicals, because we believe whatever has happened because of COVID, because of geopolitical, China's prowess in some of these chemicals is not going to come back. So rise and shine by investing in high quality chemical companies. But remember, market share is the key.
All right, Siddharth, the question is, what's your deployment strategy? Is like you deploy money overnight, next day in the morning, 9:15, or you wait for markets to time it?
So the way we do the investments is fairly simple. Is we have given the STP option to the clients, so you can choose the STP to be done. Otherwise, our philosophy is simple. You can never time the market, and why you can't time the market is because, do you remember when the tax cuts happened in 29 September, right? 3 days, Nifty was up by 12%, coffee can portfolio was up 14.5%, 3 days. Now, if you're not there in the market during those days, you're not there in the market. 5th November, Biden and Trump elections. Nobody knew what's going to be the outcome. Balakot strikes, 24th of February 2020. Next 30 days, FIs will pump nearly $4.5 billion. Nobody knew about it. Remember, it's not important to time the market. It's important how much time you spend with the market. It's not important when to spend, when do you tell your child to do this or that and become a helicopter parent. Rather than that, spend more time and you can observe what your child is good and direct on a constant basis. Your investments are like your children. Spend time with them, nourish them well. They will be healthy and they will benefit you.
Apurva, I hope Siddharth is able to answer a question. In case you have anything, please type in. The next question is, how many businesses do you generally hold in your CCP portfolio? A. And B is, how do you churn? This second question is actually can be divided in two parts. One is, what if the business doesn't plan out or execute the way you expect them to be? A. Or what if it becomes expensive? So both the strategies.
Manish, do you want to answer this?
Yeah, sure. So we normally try to hold between 10 to 15 businesses. And that concentration is very deliberate, because when the width of the portfolio goes up, the depth of your research usually takes a beat. Right? There are only so much due diligence that you can do, with a 25, 30, 40 portfolio, company portfolio on an ongoing basis also, and at the time of initial investment. So that becomes a real challenge. And that is why we try to keep it concentrated and the weights in the portfolio are all meaningful, right? So every single stock movement makes a difference to the portfolio. You're not trying to hide behind something. You're not unnecessarily diversifying. Sorry, the second part of your question was about how do we have an exit strategy and what happens if the business is not performing. Now, typically churn is divided into two parts. So there is risk reward management, and then there is a complete exit from the portfolio. Complete exit from the portfolio in the last 4 years we've had only. And what determines it? There are basically 2 or 3 very simple rules that we've set for ourselves. That if there is a corporate governance compromise, there is a business change which has happened from the level or the model that you kind of conceived initially and you thought about initially, or the company in question has digressed a little bit from whatever strategy they had. And these are the times when we kind of make a complete exit from the portfolio. Otherwise, we never ever make. Short-term business cycles usually don't deter us much. But as far as short-term movements are concerned, there is a risk-reward management strategy in place. If the risk-reward kind of gets disbalanced or lopsided way too much, then you do tweak the portfolio a little bit to adjust for it. But those are minor cases, few and far in between. Where the churn is deliberately kept low. And it has to be a really substantial, permanent change, either in corporate governance or business model to make us exit that stock.
Okay. So one is you said that there either you will exit completely or you'll have a risk management system in which you kind of evaluate, analyze, and then start exiting. And you will take your own time. Okay, I hope Manish is able to answer this question as well. Next question is from Harsh. How do identify Ambit identify sector where long mega trend is coming? Please share few case studies to understand your thought process.
So the best examples I can give you are the couple of investments we made last year, and the identification of the sector is always top down. And the identification of the company in that sector is always bottom, right? So it's a combined strategy, so to speak. What helps us a lot is a large research team at our disposal. Usually you will not see 1,500 crore AMCs running with 8 research analysts, right? Usually the number is much lesser. And what we typically do is identify trends in advance, right? So for example, when you look at our April 1, 2020 newsletter, we had published a survival strategy. And we had done this study across the portfolio that if the business is shut today for 6 months, 0 revenues, how many of our companies are going to be able to survive? Right. 45 out of 47 companies at that point of time came out in the green. So that was us staying ahead of the curve. Then the other thing we identified was which are the sectors that can benefit out of the pandemic rather than kind of lose or just maintain the growth. And we identified 2 such sectors. One was organized retail, and the other one was life insurance. And that's where the investment happened. Like I said, the sector analysis is always top down, and the company analysis is always bottom up. And that is a combined strategy with which we identify stock ideas.
Yeah. What's your views on banking space from here onwards?
Very bullish. I think we were very bullish, before the whole second wave came through also. And we were identifying ideas. We had increased the weight of BFSI in the portfolio. In fact, today in Coffee Can, it is the single largest weight sector at around 25-26%. Yes, there is going to be a curtailment as far as the economic growth of the country is concerned because of the second wave. We are probably not going to grow at 12%, but we are probably going to grow closer to 9% base is what my view is. But still, this is going to be a country that is going to see 2 things. One is steady, high single-digit growth for the next couple of years. This year is going to be 9%. Next year, there's going to be a little spillover from this year to next year. There's again going to be a 9% kind of a growth in GDP that you'll see. And that cannot happen without the participation of BFSI as a sector. And second is CapEx cycle will get delayed, but it will definitely come, right? Because the economic recovery is always going to be V-shaped as you come out of the pandemic. So probably June, starting mid-June, is when you'll see the economic revival starting to happen. And as and when that happens, with a month lag, maybe 2 months lag, you'll see the capex cycle rising also, which will essentially going to result in credit growth offtake as well. So identify good banks, market leading banks, prefer private banks over public sector banks, and the top 3-4 banks make for a great investment from a perspective.
Okay, the next question is: do you have IT or tech stocks in your coffee can portfolio?
Yes, 9% weight in technology.
Okay, next question is from Siddharth. So post investment, Siddharth, is there a way that the client can view the portfolio online?
Yes. So we have a portal through which you can view your portfolio on a real-time basis every day. The NAVs don't change during the intraday, how you will see the stock price movement, but every day, end of the day, the stock price changes, gets updated, and you can view it on a daily basis. So that's available on a real-time basis.
Okay. So the question is, what's your views on PI industries? It looks to be a good secular play, but at the same time, it's very expensive from a valuation perspective.
So Manish, you want to take it or?
Yeah, you take it.
Okay. So PI industries. So clearly the valuations have got
Expensive
to a certain extent, and this is because there are limited chemical plays. But if you look at the order book, so I want to make you guys understand what does PI essentially does. PI has got 3 specific spaces at which it commands near monopoly. One is agrochemicals, second is their own branded chemicals, and the third is the outsourced. So they do white label products. What PI has done is very simply, they have ramped up their production capacity way in advance. So for last couple of years, and you would, if you go back a couple of years, their stock price was muted because they were investing heavily into the company. Now the entire reaping of the benefits of the investments which they have done in the past is actually coming into the foreplay. I can't predict what can happen in the short term, but all the 3 spaces where they are present, the margins are gonna jump. Their command on the products and on the demand will remain high. Hence, there can be short-term fluctuations, but a great longer-term buy, Keep in mind, guys, here, whatever as Vikas has said earlier, I'm reiterating the fact. Most of these companies which we are talking about, we hold in our portfolio. We are not recommending by any means that you should own a stock. You should ask the advisor, you should ask AIF PMS experts, or you should ask someone who's a stock picker before you buy onto that stock. Whenever we construct any portfolio, we tend to diversify across 14-15 large businesses, credible businesses where we can have visibility of the earnings. And thus, in no means we would want to own a bad business. Having said that, we always have this portfolio approach. So do not take any of the stock recommendations on the face value. Do deep research. Maybe in the next webinar, we can also tell you how you should, or how can you find basic 5-7 parameters through which you can find which are great businesses, how to, what are the measures of consistency. Just looking at a basic filter, how can you approach to them? So we can teach in the next webinar, but for now, ensure that you take that portfolio approach or ask the advisor.
Okay. So nowadays, platform-based companies are coming out a lot. So how do you shortlist some of them, and where maximum growth is expected? The platform-based businesses.
So what do you mean by platform-based businesses? It's very simply, they are matching the needs of buyers and sellers. Now, This is something which is at this point in time very relevant, because technology is enabling these businesses, and what they do, they make margins from both the sides, from matching the needs. The point is, platform kind of businesses are appearing across sectors. However, the caveat is, at some level, if the platform can be undermined after the introduction, if the buyer and seller meets together, then it will be a challenge. Hence, what you should look at is a very simple aspect. Look at the platforms where the manufacturer does not have prowess to reach to the end customer directly, where the B2C business is not present, and it's a fragmented market. The ticket size is smaller, because at some level, if there is institutionalized demand and institutionalized supply, after a point in time, they would match together. So keep in mind, look at businesses where there is a genuine need of matching, and that's the place where you can pick up. Most of these businesses are on the unlisted space, very select few on the listed space. So be watchful where you invest, because they may not have a proven track history of delivering growth when they achieve scale. Because keep in mind, to run a 300 crore top line company versus a 3000 crore versus a 30,000 crore top line company, these are all very different ball games. 300 crores more often do not become 3000 crores. They die in the process, or they become stagnant.
Okay, so if there are no more questions, so I have two questions. So one for Manish and one for Siddharth. So first question is to Manish. Manish, what do you do when beta stock starts participating and quality goes sideways? For example, if you look at your own fund, Emerging Giant Fund, it has underperformed by some percentage, because of late we see a lot of beta stocks participating, especially in the small cap segment, and a lot of investors are sort of attracted towards that. So what's your message to all our viewers?
So what I tell everybody is very simple, is that returns should not be the determinant of where you're investing. See, because if you stay invested in any asset class for a long enough period of time, the returns will follow, right? If I give you an example, if you would have invested in 2000 in gold, you would have made money. If you would have invested in real estate in Bombay, you would have made 10x, 15x money, right? Your debt would have made money, tax-free bonds would have made money, government securities would have made money, equity would have also made. In 2003, all you needed to do was to put a dart and throw darts, whatever name came, just buy it, your money would have been multiple X at some point of time, right? So returns will follow. If you choose the right investment vehicle over a long period of time, returns will always follow. That's not the point. The point is a philosophy and the purpose of investing. See, I always give this example that times are tough, right? We're all going through a tough time. We need liquidity in hand in case God, forbid, nothing happens. But in case some emergency happens, what do? You need some liquidity. Now you park that liquidity into PPF. Great investment vehicle, yeah, 7-8% compounded tax-free return. But will you get that money when you need it? If there's an emergency in the house, you won't need it. So returns come to naught. So that is why mentally you need to be attuned to the investment philosophy. And that is why, when the bull market comes through, high beta looks very attractive. And, it is very alluring as a concept. But what you need to understand is that what goes up comes down also at some point of time. For every January 2021, there is going to be a March 2021, and then April 2021, January also, right? And inherently, you need to build an aspect of safety and not fall into trap. Choose investments that are going to give you steady returns across long periods of time. Breaking the cycle of greed and fear is essentially how you make money.
Can I just give an analogy here, Manish, if you don't mind? Think through it. when a tree grows, nobody even realizes. It grows silently and it keeps growing, 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 growing. When it's get cut, then it makes a loud noise. So remember, investments are like that. If you keep doing the small, simple things, slowly, without making noise, without hearing the noise of the market also, what is in favor, what is not in favor, you'll keep growing like a tree and you'll become a very big tree. God forbidden, if you get into the wrong side and if you get into these momentum stocks, your fall will make a very loud noise, very, very loud noise. And you will be the first one to hear it. So please.
All right. So second question to Siddharth. So generally, it's been observed that you don't come out with too many funds. So you stick to these limited funds and try and focus more on that. So how do you want to position Ambit AMC per se?
So very, very simple. What we say, we don't believe in khichdi. We don't believe in mixing up options. If you are here to protect your life, buy a term cover. If you're looking for investments, look for the investment solutions which are specific to you. And that's what we have done in our Ambit Asset Management. We have created 3 portfolios. A large cap portfolio, which is extremely stable, and you have seen the returns which Manish has shown on the chart. It does not even move the needle. 18, 19 were bad, 20 was also bad. It didn't move the needle. Double digit returns year after year after year after year. You want to have a sleeve which is very, very peaceful. Fill it, shut it and forget it. Coffee can is the portfolio. Large cap biased. You want little more excitement. You want to find the next companies which can become nifty, which will be little more volatile. Market leaders, great companies, but still finding their feet somewhere in between. Go for good and clean mid-cap companies. Good and clean filters will help you to protect on the downside. If you're a little more adventurous, go on to the emerging giants. Small cap can become multi-cap, can become multi-baggers, can become really big companies. Again, micro market leaders, zero leverage, almost negligible leverage on the balance sheet, good corporate governance, good management, but these are smaller companies with large holdings with the promoters, and hence liquidity can be a challenge. So because of the market pressure, the stock can correct. So if you have a stomach which does not move, the water in the stomach does not move with the movements of the market, emerging giants. So you should be clear. If you are clear with your destination, if you are clear in your mind with the destination, we have the right vehicle for you. We are not here to choose the destination for you. We are here to provide you with a vehicle, and we will stick to that promise of the right vehicle throughout. That's what we'll do.
All right. So with this, we would like to conclude the session. Once again, I would like to take this opportunity to thank all the investors for taking the time out from their busy schedule on Friday, coming and joining in, asking a lot of questions. I hope we are able to answer some of them. If in case you have any more questions, please type in your questions to me. I mean, a simple email ID, vikas@aifpms.com. And then I'm going to go back to Siddharth and take his opinion on those questions. So thank you, Manish. Thank you, Siddharth, for joining in. Our endeavor at AIF and PMS Experts India is very simple, that we would like to educate and empower our investors with more knowledge and wisdom. And therefore, we invite industry experts like you. So once again, thank you so much for accepting our request, joining the call, and answering all the questions so patiently. So once again, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And wish you all a very safe and healthy life. Stay safe and take care of your family. These are tough times, but remember, there's a single dose which will cut all the bad things. Drink, drink, and drink. Lot of positivity. That will help each one of us. Thank you and Jai Hind.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Manish. Thank you, Umang and Mukesh, for helping us to organize this beautiful session. Once again, thank you so much, everyone.